I do love the occasional drip marketing, but Qiuyuan Games, they seem to always wanna—
You like our marketing? You like our marketing? Take it!
Can't believe I'm saying this, but keep doing it, Qiuyuan Games. We've got a chick magnet, Space Ishtar, a Chunibyo, a kawaii high school girl, a badass chick invoking her Second Amendment rights, and most significantly, we got a man.
I like dick!
As to who they are, no idea, which is why I'm making this video. So let's start analyzing. They often say ladies first, but Wuwa has too many ladies, so let's switch the table a bit and say men first. I'm looking out for the lads. So for starters, let's visually see what we can make out of this guy. His design reminds me of a crane, you know, like the white bird. And if you also look at the hair, it kind of looks like feathers, but what's throwing me off the motif is, you know, the fact that he has this regalia of a lion here. Maybe he's a part of a security corps in Huanglong somewhere. And this should already be noted, but this guy is 100% clearly Huanglong material. But as to what city he's from, don't know. I highly suspect he's not Jinzhou though, because we've already been to Jinzhou, and I'm thinking Qiuyuan Games wants to introduce something new. Guy is indeed very handsome. We do like some dark, attractive eyes here. Now the next very significant part of his design is what I thought was a GoPro on a fishing stick. This looks to be like a kind of a bone or something. And then we have this bamboo thing, which now that I have a closer look is not a camera. Perhaps a storage for drinks. Or rather than being a drinking contraption, maybe it could be something that stores a particular thing. So it contains a scroll or something, or a piece of document. Just something that's important to be keeping around. And then along with his white design, we also see some dashes of red, namely on his pants and also on his drapes. His design very much reminds me of not only the crane motif, but also the old Chinese paintings that you see that's often made with ink. And as a result, this guy could totally be Aero, which is the first and foremost element people are probably thinking of. But then he could also be a Havoc Resonator just because of that ink aesthetic. Maybe that's what they want to capture here. Oh yeah, I also noticed he has a scar here. His title in his marketing drop, he was called the Wayfaring Swordsman. Something I've noticed is that when people saw this guy for the first time, they often commented that he looked straight out of a wuxia novel or xianxia novel, which is basically your Chinese fantasy stuff. And a particular trope that I've found in these kinds of novels is that sometimes you'll encounter a particular character who looks like some average normal dude, like literally a fisherman, but he's actually some super OP swordsman. And I think it's this aesthetic which Wu was trying to capture with Qiuyuan. Now let's say Scar really did escape out of jail, but not gonna lie, I'm very on the fence of that because when we did see Scar, we also saw Cristoforo waving his pages around. So that's making me think he's just making an illusion of Scar in that scene. Anyway, well, let's entertain the prospect that Scar is back. What I suspect the purpose of Qiuyuan will be, he's probably tracking him down. Because, being the Wayfaring Swordsman, he has a reason to be traveling around. And if they need to capture someone like Scar, they need someone pretty damn powerful. And I suspect that might be what Qiuyuan is. A harmless looking dude, but he's actually a freaking genius with the sword. Oh, so his name is a Wayfaring Swordsman, so I'm pretty sure his weapon is a sword. Unless Qiuyuan Games says, nope, this guy's actually strapped. And just like in the Shanshan wuxia novels, I fully suspect this guy will probably be able to glide around like they do in those movies. You really need to watch them in order to know what I'm talking about here. And I'm also fully suspecting he has a particular sword style as well that's very based off Chinese martial arts. If you go on Bilibili, you will notice that the love for this guy is extremely paramount. He's already got freaking thirst edits everywhere on this man. And it doesn't surprise me. Wuxia and Shansha genre novels are very popular in China, obviously. Okay, I think that sums up Qiuyuan. Let's move next. I remember first seeing her and I was just like, oh, this must be a new region. Maybe this chick is outside of New Fed. But I'm also thinking that maybe New Fed is kind of like America and Australia, whereby they are very diverse and have people from all parts of the world. Anyhow, let's take a look at her. Yeah, she really is the dark high school girl from most animes you've probably seen, with the red aesthetic as well. Very strong in the red aesthetic. We have the red ribbons here, the really nice red eyeliner. Wait, what is that thing on her neck? This is not a Suicide Squad kind of thing, is it? Perhaps she's really that powerful to a point where she needs something to keep her powers in check. And as we go down, we see, yep, this is how you can tell it's a sailor uniform. It's the sailor segment of the whole uniform. And we also see that we have a tasset mark here. Something I didn't really see with Qiuyuan, but it's probably in his clothes somewhere, so maybe he'll strip off or something. It's interesting how her uniform's kinda a bit cut up. Now onto the weapon, because I actually need two perspectives on this. In the official reveal in the 2.4 live stream, we could see a wider view of Chisa. Circular handle. I was immediately thinking this is some kind of Xenoblade thing going on here. Or it's kill or kill. The more I think about it, and also the fact that she has the motif of incisors, I'm starting to think this is more for kill or kill kind of thing. Maybe this pops out to be some kind of scissor. We also noticed some strings here, and I remember reading one of the comments on X mentioning how this could actually be some kind of bowled out bow and arrow, and the parallels were pretty strong. But I have a tad bit of a doubt, mainly because, well, look at the blade. It's a freaking ruler here. What the hell? I know as children we love to use the rulers as swords, and maybe that's what Chisa's doing here. She's living out the dream we all wanted as children, where your 60 centimeter ruler is suddenly a god-killing weapon. So it could be a ruler, it could be a scissor. And you know what all these things are pointing to? I fully suspect Chisa has the motif of a seamstress. The reason I say this is because in her design, you can see a lot of her fingers have like these bandages around them. And often I've seen with the seamstress kind of character in the animes, they always seem to have bandages wrapped around their fingers. Furthermore, we see that with her weapon, it's like a multitude of seamstress tools. We have a ruler here. Those specific lines, I know I've seen these lines somewhere in their work. And also we have all these strings here, and I'm pretty sure this circular thing, it's a reference to those old tools which they spin threads essentially. And also look, with how her clothes are, I'm thinking that's also just to show that whilst Chisa is not so great with keeping her clothes, she can always sew new ones here. Or maybe she's taking parts of her clothes to make her sewing ability work more. Finally, in her drop, she is titled as the incisor of the strings of annihilation. Jesus! In her hands, they are ending things. A lot of things. And the incisor, being Chisa and her tool, she's the one that primarily does the manipulation of these strings to make apocalyptic things happen. Hence this motif here. We have the scissor going in a particular line, like come on, this is clearly some tailoring work. So that's why I'm pretty confident she is like a seamstress. Manipulation of strings and threads is probably her main thing. Yinlin is threads, but Chisa is more like sewing threads. So yeah, welcome to Wuwa, Chisa. You came right out of a high school anime and now you've isekai'd into another anime world. And now we move on to Galbrena. The devil ever burned in purifying flames. First off, let's check out how detailed her blick is. God damn it. It looks like a handgun, but it's more like a double-barreled shotgun that happens to be a handgun. Very strong on the feather motifs as well, as we can see with the blue feathers here, and the feathers on her nape, and the feathers that go down from her ponytail. Hence why a lot of people thought she was like Yang Yang's sibling, but I really don't think so. And the reason is because outside of also being a bird, she also clearly has the snake motif here. So birds plus snakes, that's very reminiscent of chimeras. And we see more evidence of the snake motif basically on her arm right here, and her gun too. Now let's keep analyzing her from a visual standpoint. Strong purple gaze, we know of the snake charms on her ear. As we go further down, yep, freaking got her midriff exposed everywhere. I wanna slurp my wine off that. Oh, that's a tap on her arm. Oh, actually, wait, oh, shoot. I used to think that was a glove, but no, that's actually part of her arm. I have a strong feeling that might be a mutation from her resonance ability, perhaps? That don't look natural. But when I look at her more, maybe this is like the poison part of her resonance ability, because she has so much of the chimera aesthetic, right? So maybe with the snake part, she has a specific toxin in her claws. And as for what the griffin does, namely what the wing part of her does, yeah, very open speculation. It could be that she's able to fly around and shoot things. And yeah, that's really about it. We also see this target point iconography. So clearly, yes, the girl is indeed a sharpshooter. Now, lore-wise, 100% this girl is from Septimont. Because if we look back at the story trailer...
As doom looms over Renacita, an outlander returns whence they came.
Outlander returns whence they came. That is literally him saying, girls coming back home. And if you want more evidence on this, notice how for the Septimont Resonators, they have this particular background transition, right? Now, if we go to Galbrena, also very similar thing. Except it's just a tad different. Now, continuing on Cristoforo's reveal with Galbrena, he actually does show a bit more.
Slowly, they join the crowd pilgriming toward the kingdom rising in the dark waves.
This particular line here, it does make me a little bit anxious in terms of what could be going on with Septimon, because Christopher mentioned here, the kingdom rising in the dark waves. If you recall from the 2.4 trailer, Phrolova is mentioning how they're trying to make Lupa be the harbinger of the next dark tide. From what Christopher is here saying, with the kingdom rising the dark waves, I suspect they not only want the dark tide to return, but they want some kind of new era to come out of the dark tide, like a new, I don't know, new race of people or something. And so Galbrena here is basically there to infiltrate and destroy from within, probably. She more like seems the type to do things in the shadows. So yeah, quite curious in terms of where they could go with Galbrena and her significance to the story, but only time will tell what will happen with her. Okay, next up. Moon arrow that anchors shifts of fate. Quite an interesting line, but I think we can analyze that a little bit later. Let's just first look at our Space Ishtar. Although you are very cute. Yeah, she really does look like the moon goddess, just with the whole motif here of crescents, because we see it in a highlight in her hair. And also with the golden ornaments on her head, it screams goddess, you know. Some more crescents around her arm, the phases of the moon on her midriff. And as we can see, there's a giant crescent table looking thing that Iuno is holding. And of course, there's also more moon motifs here. This girl is moon on moon on moon on moon. Now, if we see her discus thing a little bit more expanded, part of me used to think that maybe she was the kind of girl that has the weapon type of like a giant disc, and she just throws that around and hits people with it. But then, once I looked at the 2.4 story trailer, it got me thinking.
An observer of the future and the laws of causality, she sings a silent lament.
An observer of the future and the laws of causality, she sings a silent lament. That immediately screams to me that Iuno is probably a kind of diviner character, fortune teller kind of person. Thus, I have this feeling that maybe this is like a table where maybe she'll throw out special moon arrow lights from her table or something, I don't know. But the main point is, this character is definitely having the role of being someone who can predict the future. There's probably some kind of connection to being a prophesizer and the moon, but at the moment I cannot pick up on that connection right now. One more little point of interest, which is mainly from the accessories trailer. The dark tide falling onto the moon. And then suddenly, it's gone. I don't think that means she's dying for sure, but when Christopher mentions she sings a silent lament. Singing a silent lament. I mean, if it's a fate she cannot stop, then no wonder her moon abilities got turned to black thanks to the dark tide. But alas, that's completely speculation on my end. Iuno is Septimon's moon goddess, but she is also someone who is able to predict fate. Yeah, moving on. God damn, when I look at her, that's a menacing glare and a half. Jesus. But yes, here is our sun goddess. Very obvious because the whole sun motif is literally on her head. You cannot ignore it even if you wanted to. Praise the sun, head ass. Literally. Much like Iuno, her motif is completely all over her. Suns on the earrings, suns on the chest. Her great sword is probably a sun motif as well, because look at that giant icon there. And in a wider picture, we have a better view of this. Sun motifs on her gauntlet, on her dress, and yes, on her symbol as well. But interestingly, she also has two moons featured here, outside of just being the sun as well. Maybe that's just to confirm her connection to Iuno, like she needs her or something? Yuri bait type beat? What's interesting with Augusta is that, well, if you look at her belt, you see three particular symbols. One I'm not too sure on. The second one is definitely that griffin we've been seeing throughout Septimon's motif. And then lastly, quite importantly, we have Medusa here. Now, if we recall from the 2.4 trailer, I remember we saw a giant dragon that had been turned to stone. Now, I wasn't too sure if the whole Medusa motif was going to appear here, but it seems we have some reference to Medusa with Augusta, which is quite interesting, because if you want to be wearing something, you want to be representative of it. Maybe there is a meaning to this, deeper meaning. Now, given that they call her the undying sun eternally ablaze, like, it's very self-explanatory. This chick is forever on fire, apparently, in the metaphorical sense. Perhaps in Septimon, she is the one that keeps the light going, which could be an expression of her goodness, or maybe it's an expression of her power. But I think there is a way we can further look into this. Once again, referencing the story trailer.
For no one knows who will be crowned the hero of heroes in the end.
Two things I want to mention before I go into what Christopher was mentioning. Look at her sword. It's way thinner than before, but it also very much reminds me of Radahn's black blades. But outside of Radahn, yes, her blade way thinner here, which is very interesting considering in her illustration, the blade she was holding was a freaking slab of black metal. But going back to what Christopher was mentioning, for no one knows who will be crowned the hero of heroes in the end. So maybe in Septimont, you have the gladiator winner, but then there's also another particular character of importance, being the hero. And maybe this is what Augusta is. Hence why she is the eternal sun forever ablaze. Because perhaps Augusta in Septimont, she is a legendary hero in that society. Hence she is not only very powerful, but extremely important. I've just come for she is literally the sun. And as to what kind of entity she is fighting here, she's fighting something alone, but to be called the hero of heroes is already extremely renowned on her end. So yeah, no wonder she has the command of the people in that trailer. Now, I know I was talking about her weapon a lot and why it's suddenly gone on a diet to look so thin here, but I think we can sort of speculate why. Isn't that interesting? What makes her blade so fat is that there are pieces that are touched onto it. What could that even mean? Let's first of all look at these pieces because they don't all look like bits of a dagger. Like, it honestly looks more like shrapnel, as if it's just pieces of metal that have been rudimentarily stuck onto her sword, making it look way bigger than it should be. So I have this theory that maybe, because there must be some reason she's wanting to attach those fragments onto her blade. Maybe her sword, it used to be super really big, but then that giant portion of it shattered. And now in order to keep this sword in being its true form as best as she can, she has to attach the remaining pieces like this. Or these pieces of shrapnel perhaps belong onto another very ancient and powerful sword in Septimont. But as it's been shattered and Augusta wants to obtain that power as best as she can, she just attaches those shrapnel onto her sword like this. Whatever works, you know. Now finally, how does Augusta even do this? Because she is the sun motif, and how does attaching shrapnel onto a blade even relate to a sun? Now you could think, okay, the sun being fire, perhaps she's welding these shrapnel bits onto a sword. But as we've seen from the accessories trailer, those pieces just fall right off. And if they were welded, they are not moving because they're literally burned to stay there. Actually, now I think about it, rather than being shrapnel, maybe they are daggers. I don't know, it's hard to tell. I mean, they look like more like incomplete swords. Maybe she just wants all of her soldiers' daggers on her weapon to embody that she is the military might of Septimont. I don't know. Anyway, I went off topic with that. How is she keeping these pieces of metal onto her sword? My theory, magnetism. How does magnetism relate to the sun? Well, if Augusta is a literal solar panel, that might be why. So she absorbs the sun power, thus from it she produces electricity, and then in her electricity, this is how she's able to perform the magnetism capability, which would be very, very interesting in her character. And I also just noticed that she has a Tassim mark on her hand, which is something I have not seen since Rover themselves. So Augusta, you may look like the sun, but you could very well actually be an electro resonator. Seeing orange lightning, yeah, that'd be very interesting. And that was Augusta. Moving on to our lucky last. The long-awaited performance, literally. There's not as much mystery around her because she's literally been with us since the start of the game, but in terms of the actual intricacies and lore of her character, that is something we will be exploring for sure, especially as she's gonna become playable. Ain't that crazy to think that 1 year of Wuwa and we finally get a Fraxis member that's playable? Nuts. Anyhow, let's look at her design some more. The first thing that really captured me when she first appeared on the 2.4 livestream was, I guess, the sincerity of her facial expression. Because Phrolova, being her, I was totally expecting something more sinister out of her face. But no, she looks very princess-like here, which is quite interesting. As we go down, we of course see the Flower of Death, as is very characteristic of her character, because that motif is literally everywhere on her, even on her bosom. And then we go down to see your occasional Fraxis strip, and them thighs save lives, goddamn. But anyway, from a lore point of view, it is said that she is perhaps not of this world. And if we look to Christopher's story trailer, he definitely does imply that.
A living soul who slumbers in the netherworld, lost in the tides of reveries.
Not really much to say here. She literally says, a living soul who slumbers in the netherworld.
Pulled in by nostalgic music of homeland, she stumbles her way across the world beyond.
On this line here, I fully suspect that whilst Phrolova was born in this quote-unquote netherworld place, she actually grew up in Septimont. Now, this world beyond, from memory, is apparently where she summons her tacit discord persona from. As she quotes, it literally comes from the beyond. And as to what the hell this beyond place even is, no idea, but it's definitely going to add some heavy lore onto the world of Wuwa. So yeah, that is Phrolova in a nutshell, and I know plenty of people are very excited for her. And I too also kind of fan, because if evil, why hot? I want to pull all the Fraxis members kind of thing. Oh gosh. And with that all being said and done, that was the upcoming 2.4 plus Resonators analyzed. A very free-for-all bootleg video on my end, but hey, I wanted to talk about them and I've been able to do that today. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the characters as well, so please leave them in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you for whatever next content comes out. Much love everyone, and peace.